when I'm actually live.
It
It takes me a minute.
says we're live now. I don't know if that means anything, but
On this one, it does, but when I go to the Instagram, there we go. It takes it a moment to
okay,
connect.
okay,
Okay.
here we
So it
are.
looks like on Instagram, it might show half of our faces. Let's see. I see like half of your face and half of my face.
Which way should I move?
Let me see. Let me see this layout. Let me see if I can fix it.
We got time.
Yeah. Let's see. And then there's a big delay too on Instagram. So, yay, fun. Let me try this way. See, so now it's just my shoulder
Yeah.
on Instagram. Is that better, Sydney? Can you see it? You can see both of us? Oh, on and that's on Instagram? Oh, okay, cool. So apparently it's just the way my thing looks. Okay.
All right. Okay. Nice.
So
We're figuring it out.
Sid says we're good. We're normal looking on Instagram.
All right.
So
Hey, Sid.
he said, "Hey, Sid." She doesn't have her headphones on. She can't hear yet. She said, "Hi, Grizz." All right. Okay. Does something. What? Are we good? Yeah, it's a big delay. Okay, cool. All right. So, hello everybody. Welcome to this live episode on talking about it. I have been following in my mentor's lead and trying to go live a little bit more, just to kind of get used to everything. And yeah, still working on it. Still have some kinks, but I feel like for the most part we're doing well. But yeah, so thank you for joining today. I'm not alone on today's live, so you won't have Ash rambling some crazy stuff. I'm actually joined by Grizz, Fernando from Kiss FM, and just one of Talking About It's very first guest and close friends. And I'm so happy to have you on tonight. Because we've been talking about this for what, almost a year.
Yeah, this episode specifically, I think after the first time that I joined you guys, we started talking about movies and mental health. You're a big movie fan. I'm a big movie fan. And so I think the idea was there, but, busy people, always hard to, like ships passing in the night, you know?
Right? Yeah, and I think too, we I kind of was like, I was still trying to figure things out. So I'm glad that we finally got to make it happen tonight, and thank you so much. But we'll just hop on into it. If you would like to be a part of the conversation, and you can just put comments in on each of the platforms that you're joining us from, and we'll be able to get to them. But just before we start, I'll go ahead and put one in there. What's your favorite movie? Put that. Let us know in the comments so we can start talking about just different movies. But yeah, so for me, movies, I always say that I was like Chip Douglas in The Cable Guy. That was the best representation of me as a kid because I was an only child. So my mom was had to work. My dad, when I was in Arizona with him, I was having like babysitters, or I was like home by myself watching movies. So I grew up in front of a television, watching movies, watching shows, and that was something that we kind of connected on the episode that we had originally, was talking about how our love for movies kind of got us through some hard times. So,
Yeah.
Grizz, if you'd like to kind of share a little bit some of your favorite movies.
Yeah, of course. And you know what? I gotta say too, I relate as well because well, firstly, just shout out, great name drop because the Cable Guy, one of the best movies out there, an absolutely underrated classic. It was one of those that didn't get enough credit when it first came out. A beautiful, well done movie. I love it so much, and I think I was the same as you, honestly, because even though my dad was the one who taught me sort of like everything I know about like pop culture, really, everything that he had grown up with, all the movies that he loved, the TV shows that he was really into, cartoons, songs, and he had such a random mix too, because even from music, we would go from listening to like gangster rap, from like Cypress Hill to like old school Eminem and Jay Z and Dr. Dre and all that stuff, and then right afterwards, he would swap over to something like cumbias or some sort of Spanish music that was so wildly different, and that, or maybe it was like classic rock next. All of a sudden, like that was just this big, huge, variety of stuff that we were taking in. And at the same time, even though he was the one who was showing me all that stuff, he also wasn't around. My parents were working like crazy, so they actually would work nights all the way into late night. And so when I would leave in the morning, they'd be asleep. When I'd come home in the afternoon from school, they were at work, and by the time I'd go to bed, they still hadn't come home because that's how late they worked.
Yep.
And I know it's sort of like I don't know. I guess one of those things where like that's how you get raised. Yeah, for sure. Like I got raised by video games and TV, but that was I feel like I learned a lot there, so I'm
Yeah.
not necessarily upset about it. And in going back to some of those things that I watched when I was a kid, I think it surprises me. Like you go back and revisit some of those movies, and you're like, man, I can see why, as a kid who was alone all the time or who was dealing with these things I didn't know I was dealing with, I can see why these movies were so relatable to me, right? Like I can see why these things were so relatable to me. Um, so for me, I think some of my big favorites, honestly, one of the big ones that has been most recent because it just got re-released recently, so it was in theaters and I got to go see it again. But Speed Racer, I
Yeah.
tell people all the time that like I love movies so much, and of the two movies in the top, I didn't realize it until maybe like 2 years ago. But both my favorite movies are car movies. The first one is Speed Racer, which is just a ridiculous, crazy, candy coated, exciting movie, and then Death Proof, which is another car movie, but
Oh.
in a much darker, in a much darker sense.
Is that a Quentin Tarantino movie, The Death Proof?
Yeah, that's the Tarantino
Yeah.
one. Yeah,
With
and
Kurt Russell?
yes, with who does such a great job in it. He's so good.
Yeah.
But that one, those two were movies that I rewatched a lot, especially Death Proof. When Death Proof, I think they both came out around the same time. Actually, I think Death Proof came out the year before Speed Racer, and who knows why exactly? Death Proof, I couldn't tell you why for sure, but Speed Racer resonated with me because it's a movie about grief and loss and family, and I think at the time maybe a family that I wanted that I didn't exactly have. And so seeing the way that family was so strong together and the way that they supported each other and how they cared about each other, like all this stuff, it was very I don't know, it was so heartwarming to me. Like it always
Yeah.
made me tear up. And as a teenager who was manly, I guess, and trying to figure that all that stuff out, I was like, I shouldn't be crying at this remake of an anime.
It's crazy, right? The movies that do that to us sometimes is kind of like, wait, what? And um, you know, going back to kind of what you were talking about with your dad, my dad actually was the one I think who influenced my music choice definitely. And one thing that we used to do, or that was back in the day when you would like burn CDs or cassette tapes, we didn't have very good communication, but he would make me tapes with movie soundtracks. So like all the movie soundtracks would be on like a thing, and then in between, my dad would cut in quotes or lines from the movies. So that was kind of like how we
That's
had
awesome.
our conversations or whatever. But Quentin Tarantino's movies were like I think the first movies that as an adult, um it was stuff that I could connect with because it was something that we both could enjoy. So like that's why Death Proof, all the Kill Bills, like
Yeah,
those movies were very prevalent in my life and at that time. So yeah, I think it's crazy how, and then my mom uh had movies growing up, but her movies were like all the comedies, like I go back now and I look what's the one with Michael J. Fox where he's a doctor? Dang,
um,
it's spacing out on the name.
I,
But
I,
anyway,
I know I can't remember
Doc
it.
Hollywood. I think it's
Yeah.
called Doc Hollywood. And I was going back and watching it a while back. I was going back and watching it because it was one of my favorite movies, and the rating on it was like PG 13 or something. I think it was PG at the time. And they like full frontal, they like show boobs coming out of the thing. And I'm watching it with like my little brother, and I'm like, ah, like it said PG.
It's the same with
So,
Popeye, the Popeye movie with Robin
yeah.
Williams.
Oh my God.
Yes,
Yeah.
that movie is rated PG, or at the last time I checked, when I was I think like a teenager, it was rated
Yeah.
PG. And I remember watching it for the first time and just hearing him actually cuss like a sailor, like that's the term they
Yes.
use. But Popeye's a sailor, and he really was cussing, and I was like, "Yo, this is a PG movie."
Yeah, it's crazy how it changed, like even if you think back to like the Friday the 13th movies and
Yeah,
Nightmare on Elm Street, all those like 80s, 90s movies. I guess that maybe that's just cuz that's barely when the ratings were starting to be implemented and there wasn't so many different ones now. I think now there's like age group ratings that I don't think
yeah,
was back then. So I agree with you. When we look back now, I see where some of my sense of humor comes from. I see that it's dark at times or that it's very sarcastic and
yeah.
very,
Or even
and
just so weird and out there, you know? Like
right.
I think one of my all-time favorites that honestly is probably a good mental health movie because it just makes it makes I think no matter what's going on in my life, I think I that movie always brings good memories every place I've watched it or whatever. But Kung Pao and To the Fist, you know?
That's a good
Uh,
movie.
just an absolutely ridiculous, absurd film, as just crazy as hell. But every time it makes me think about being a kid and watching this very silly, hyper ridiculous movie where like a cow is imitating the Matrix and shooting slow motion milk out of its udder. Like it's crazy and ridiculous, but it's one of those I think that did like shape the humor for an entire generation.
I think so, and so, like, we have an age difference, so for you, it's like Kung Pao, that was probably, I think, one of the first movies that I watched with my husband. That's my husband's comedy, is the Kung Pao movie, and I was just like, "Oh my god," like, I could not believe that was, like, actually happening, but that's a great movie. A lot of the movies that I grew up watching, and I think, like, where my sense of humor and everything comes from is, like, the Eddie Murphy movies. Beverly
uh,
Hills Cop,
Coming
Coming
to
to
America.
America.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like, always watching comedians. I started looking back on it. I was watching I think it was the Eddie Murphy Story on Netflix, and he was talking about, like, a lot of his movies, Harlem Nights, like, those are all movies I used to watch, and it's all comedians in it, so I feel like that's why I have no filter. I think that's why I have no filter. But also in thinking of it, like going through a lot of the stuff that I was going through at that time, in the 80s, there was no panic attack, anxiety. There wasn't any of those things being talked about. So for me, it was just throwing myself into these movies and learning how to be hard and learning how to be tough from some of these characters. Um, I had a guy in well, I was in this program called Synergy. I went to Montwood for high school, and one assignment that we had was to we would get partnered up with somebody, and then we would have to write an essay on what we see from that person. But you couldn't pick somebody you were friends with. You had to pick somebody that you weren't really close with.
Mm.
And one of my classmates picked me, and his I actually still have his essay on me, and he basically hit me nail on the head, but he compares me to Sam Jackson, and he says that he see because I'm short, I'm small, and he said, she's a small package, but she holds and hides so much that she has to have that tough exterior. And he mentioned something like that. And thinking about it now, for him when we're in high school to kind of see that, um I wonder what he's doing now. Like, that's a very interesting thing, like, for somebody to have that foresight, that really didn't know me very well, to kind of have that. And that was very my upbringing. My outer shell was very Sam Jackson, just very hard, very rough, and that
Yeah.
was to protect me, right? So I think that's why I kind of gravitated to some of those movies back then, and the healing, the coping of it all. And
I
like you
think
said,
Oh, sorry. No, I was gonna
no,
say I
no, go
think
ahead.
that's interesting because because those were all movies that I watched as well. Like I said, these were all, I think all of those movies, all the movies that you grew up with, my dad, raised me on. And so I saw a lot of those as I was growing up, like probably stuff that I should not have I definitely shouldn't have been watching when I was as young as I was. But those were all the things that I started watching first. And then when I got old enough to really start like choosing my own movies, and then even at one point too, because I want to say it's probably around middle school when I started watching more stuff on my own. My before that, elementary all the way up, it was mostly stuff that my dad was introducing to me, and it was a lot of that stuff. It was a lot
Yeah.
of the '80s humor, a lot of the '80s comedy, a bunch of westerns as well. My
Mm.
grandpa was a big fan of the John Wayne era, and then my dad came up, and he was a big fan of Sergio Leone and Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
And so those were like the westerns and the cop movies that I grew up watching. Those and the Death Wish movies with what's his face? I always forget his name, but it's the same as the really crazy, powerful dude in London. I can't, um,
Um,
I'm blanking on his name, but
that's okay.
all of those sort of like '80s detective westerns, the comedies as well, all the Dan Aykroyd stuff, Bill Murray stuff,
Yeah.
all of those things. They were things that that was like my foundation for film. And then, like I said, middle school, when I was finally able to start choosing my own movies, and I was able to look at what types of themes I was enjoying or what types of things I thought I would like, and I started building up the stuff I enjoyed, and that was more modern. I'm not gonna lie either. It was probably a lot more cartoons when I first really started, but it was stuff that I think I was really interested in, like Fern Gully, which is
That's a
such a
great
such a
movie.
classic, right? So good, the message of environmentalism, but it's also just so well acted, and it's kind of dark and intense, and you don't expect it from a kids movie. But it was one of those first like kids movies that really was like, hey, we're really just gonna go for it. We're gonna make this
Yeah.
cinematic and crazy and intense, and your kids are maybe gonna be traumatized a little bit. Who knows? But they also might fall in love with that smoke gas that Tim Curry played, who was singing his really epic song. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? But
Yeah.
I loved getting the mix of those two worlds as I grew up, because I think it put me in a place where I could look back on what came before and what I felt about these things, and I could start to like place myself in what I thought film was going to be as it moved forward. And so I really latched on to certain things. I was a big fan of certain styles as I got older. Like I think really liking the like movies that came out like There Will Be Blood or No Country for Old Men,
Those are
liking that
great movies.
aesthetic and wanting to dig into them so much because I grew up with like a Western background.
Yeah.
I think that was one of those things that like it drew me towards movies that I think I wouldn't have expected or I wouldn't have thought I'd like, but it was because it felt like the past, right? Like these things looked
The
kind of like the
nostalgia.
things that I grew up with, right? There was a nostalgia to them, that Western feel, or other films as well that sort of mimic the feel from back in the day. But I wanted to ask you, while we're talking about all this, the mental health and movies. I wanted to ask you, what was one movie for you that is one like you go back to all the time, that is a big maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be like a mental health movie that like fixes you or whatever, but one of those movies that you always go back to, that always feels good, that almost always makes you feel like you're watching it for the first time, even though you've seen it like a million times.
So I have 3 of them that are, like, just, anytime I was kinda, like, freaking out or, basically, like, trying to find comfort or whatever,
Yeah.
but one of them is What About Bob? And it's funny that I've been watching it a little bit more now, like, I watch it at different stages of my life, and that movie is, like, so me. I mean, I watching it the first time, like, when I was in the '80s or '90s when it came out, like, I was like Sigmund, the little boy, like, I
Yeah.
was a hypochondriac, I was, like, in this dark place, I didn't know, and then kind of watching it as I've gotten older, it's like, I'm freaking Bob Wiley, like, right now, recently with the healing and everything I've been doing, I'm like when he's, strapped to the sailboat, thing, and he's like, I'm sailing," like, he's screaming like, "I'm sailing." That's me right now in the phase of my healing, so watching it at different phases of my healing, I feel like has been, really helpful, and funny, hilarious. Um, Another one is Home Alone,
Yes.
because that one was just, 80s movie, kid alone, and I was, like, living that, just not in, like, a big mansion or anything like that with you know what I mean? Like, so that was basically survival mode, me living that life in real life, like,
Yeah.
fighting the Harry and Marv, but like in my head and in life. So it's kind of weird looking back now and being able to associate it.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and the third one is Back to the Future. And I
yeah,
think Back to the Future for me is more so just one that you watch. That one I can watch over and over again and I find something new in it, or it's I share it with my kids. So
yeah,
yeah, I think those are the three movies that really kind of have me go back, or that I can watch and like you said find something new in it each time. But yeah, it's crazy. It
yeah.
it I feel like my movie choices are kind of like my music right now, where I'm stuck like in the 90s to 80s, 90s, 2000s. I haven't really been able to get into some of the newer things coming out. Um, but I wanted to ask too, because a lot of the westerns that you were talking about, have you noticed remakes? So like a lot of them were all remakes that we didn't even realize are remakes
Oh
until,
yeah. You
you know
know,
what I mean?
a bunch of those are actually, I think it was fun because I had found a lot of those westerns when I was younger. Because like I said, my,
Mhm.
my dad was showing them to me when I was growing up, and then as I got older, like I said, around middle school, high school, I started veering into my own world. And one of the places that I really loved, because I think just at the time I was a nerd and I was like, oh man, samurais are cool. So I started watching a lot of Kurosawa films, a lot of Akira Kurosawa movies, and I learned early on that a bunch of the, especially Sergio Leone's movies, were remakes of Kurosawa films. So like there's like one of the ones. It's not a Sergio Leone movie, but that's a big one that was a remake. Was Seven Samurai was a movie that was made by Kurosawa, and that was later
Mm.
remade into. I'm blanking on the movie right now. I shouldn't be blanking on the name, but it's specifically the western about the seven different gunmen who come
Oh,
together.
and the
The
Magnificent Seven?
Magnificent Seven, yes. So the Magnificent Seven was a remake of Akira Kurosawa's the Seven Samurai, and then there's the other
Oh.
one, the one that I think most people know, which most people probably don't realize. So A Fistful of Dollars is a classic Clint Eastwood movie as part of the Dollars trilogy, which ends with Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. A lot of people don't know that. It's A Fistful of Dollars, then For a Few Dollars More, and then The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And it's the trilogy following the unknown cowboy, the nameless cowboy, who is Clint Eastwood. And so that movie, A Fistful of Dollars, follows the story of Clint Eastwood's character who stumbles into a town that's controlled by two rival gangs. And he, in this very clever way, plays each gang so he can get the money and then watch them destroy themselves.
Mm.
And that was the same, I believe it was Yojimbo, which was an Akira Kurosawa movie. It was the exact same plot. And then later, in a movie that actually was partially shot here in El Paso, it was remade again as Last Man Standing, a Bruce Willis movie. And it's the same premise. The strifter flows into town, realizes these two gangs control, and then he starts messing with them, and it ends in this big confrontation with him fighting everybody who's remaining, and making his way out. But yeah, all three of those are it started with Yojimbo, and then it went to Fistful of Dollars, and then it went to Last Man Standing, and I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other remakes of that story as well. But yeah, Kurosawa was such an intricate and detailed storyteller, and there were so many people afterwards who've adapted his stories. But you're right, a lot of those westerns, yeah, they were stories that were adapted from other things from even further back.
Ye Yeah, a ton of different remakes, even, like, some of the comedies. Sorry, my camera, I have, like, a wire here, and anytime I, like, move, it
It drifts. Now you're gone. Now it's gone all the way.
yeah, hang on. Jeez. Just plug this back in.
Technical
This
difficulties.
thing. Yeah. Plug this cord into here. Into right here. It's right here. No, no, no. It's right here. Out of this? No, no, no. Just give me this thing here. Oh, then it is the microphone. Put the microphone back in. Cheese and rice. I know. Just plug it in.
Hey, it's just me now. How's it going? I hope you're doing well, everybody out there in Talking About It land. I'm Grizz, if you don't know me. My name is
Heck.
also Fetna. Oh, okay.
Thanks, Chris. It's a good thing I'm on with a professional.
You know how it works. Got to keep the show moving.
Well, now I realize why the cord was so tight. It was so that I would keep it on the table that I have and not fly off as I pulled it. So my bad. But yeah, so some of the comedies that I watch are that I never realized are actually remakes. So like
Mhm.
I watch a lot of Sandler movies. So like the Just Go With It is like a Goldie Hawn remake.
Mhm.
There's a ton of them. There's like the Mr. Deeds is a remake from like what I think like the 40s or 50s.
Yeah.
I
It's
think it's
crazy. I think comedies are one of those that like you never realize that comedies are remakes of other movies because it's I think maybe because people often don't like go for like the big huge comedies. I feel like a lot of the times they go for comedies that have like maybe were big at one point, but years and years and years have passed. Like it would be different like if somebody some of the more recent comedies I think are like Ghostbusters. Like when I think they
yeah.
tried to remake it, remember with Melissa McCarthy and
Mhm.
Thor was in it too. What's his face? I can't remember
I
his name
can't
right
think
now.
of it.
Um,
Helmsworth.
yes, Chris Hemsworth. Chris
Chris
Hemsworth.
Hemsworth.
And they tried to reboot that, and that one was a little bit more recent. So I think now we're starting to see. I mean, especially since reboots are so flagrant now, they're just like, oh, Moana
And
just
they
came out a
changed
couple years ago. Let's
they
make it
just
live action.
completely changed the story up as well. So like the Melissa McCarthy, the women's Ghostbusters was a little
Yeah.
closer tied to like Ghostbusters, but then they completely did the remake with Paul Rudd
Yep.
and the kid from Stranger Things. So yeah, I think it's I how what are your thoughts on remakes and how do you feel about it? Because I have thoughts.
It's weird because when I used to think about it, when I was younger and I would hang out with like, people who loved movies, I think a lot of us would have conversations, and I'm sure maybe even you as like a movie person too has had conversations like this. I think a lot of us have these conversations where we do think of an old movie and we're like, oh man, that movie was so good. They should definitely remake it. But I think in our heads when we think about that, I feel like especially when we were having those conversations, in our heads it was like a shot for shot remake where all they do is update what the graphic or like the graphics, or they update what the visual effects look like. They update what I don't know, some of the corniness maybe that it might have happened because it was an older movie and the things that they were doing were more popular. But like I feel like I used to have a lot of those conversations where it was like, yeah, this remake would be really cool. But then as we've gotten older and we've seen them actually start to remake stuff, and they
Yes.
try to do shot for shot stuff, or they like try to make it the same but they try to make it a little different. It's just, you realize that like the reason that these things are so good is because of the way that they are in that moment. Like it would be cool maybe to see a remake if somebody did it so perfectly that you didn't even know it was a remake and everything just looked
Mhm.
better, like a remaster. If anything, like that's something that video games do all the time. They'll take like an old video game that everybody loved and they'll remaster it because they can, because computer graphics and like a game engine, that's so different than like capturing the feel of a film and trying to remake it exactly. Like you just can't do it. You can't. And
Yeah.
everything from the way that people acted in those times all the way down to the way that the cameras worked at those times when you're watching the movies,
Yes.
everything you can try, you can be so meticulous, you can use CGI as much as possible, but there's nothing that will recapture the magic of a movie that you love so much. And so I think back then I used to think, man, it would be cool to see this movie remade or redone a little bit. But now as we've seen it happen and I've got older, I think I really appreciate what the old movies were. And I think less than remaking them, I just want more like reshowings. I want more people to reshow these films so we can take younger people and have them experience that in the theater, because a lot of the times they're going to look at it and be like, oh, this is cheesy and corny. But that's when you have that conversation that like the stuff that you have now, the things that you're seeing and the way that they are so advanced and cool and different, you would never have had that if it wasn't for this cult classic that failed, for this movie that nobody really saw but that later on everybody started to love and that
Mhm.
inspired your favorite director, right? Like all of these movies, the way that they are, they don't need to be remade. Those are that is the foundation that we stand on now as we look forward to like all of the amazing things that are to come. So used to be okay with remakes, used to have some idea about it, not anymore.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. Like I'm not even a sequel fan. I'm not a huge sequel fan. I mean, there's very rarely any that I'm like, okay, that was actually a pretty decent sequel. Even when
Yeah.
it comes to like kid movies and stuff, I'm not huge on it. But as far as remakes, I have this conversation because we see a lot of them, and the comments I get is like, well, it's reintroducing it to another generation. And I'm like, but how about we focus on filmmakers who are making new movies and
Mhm.
are, you some of my favorite directors are like Francis Ford Coppola, Martin Scorsese, like again, Quentin Tarantino. And yeah, they, especially with like Tarantino, he did a lot of the remakes. Like a lot of the movies that he does are, I mean, his favorite movies were westerns, so that's why you have kind of that same theme. But yeah, I'm not that big a fan of remakes.
Yeah.
So I'm
And
I'm anti. I'm not
I can't.
anti remake, but I mean, I see I like what you said about introducing the films that we had to the new generation rather than remaking it and ignoring the past or not appreciating it. We watched Indiana Jones recently, and we are watching the graphics on it, and I'm like, "Oh my god, that is like the worst graphics ever." But at that time, that was like big explosions, and so I think with this whole technology movement, as far as the CGI, the AI, things like that, I don't like it. I don't like the overproduced uh films and kind of where filmmaking is going. I miss simple the simple, and then maybe that's just me and because I grew up watching those types of movies, but also sensory overload. You know what I mean? Like a lot of the I can't do some I can't do the theater, depending on what movie.
You
One
know.
remake I did like, or I'm sorry, one sequel I did like was the Beetlejuice one recently. I did like that one.
Yeah.
There's some I think that if it's the same director, same writers, I feel like they pick up the stories better than remakes,
Yeah.
where they completely take the story and tear it up.
I think it works because you can see like the same team's vision, moving forward
Mhm.
as opposed to just like here's a bunch of the stuff you loved for a quick cash grab. So it,
Yeah.
it it definitely it makes more sense. And sometimes you get the same director or whatever coming back and it is a cash grab and they're very clearly just like clocking the check and the
Yeah.
remake kind of sucks too. But I think there are some that very much so you could see like a director come back and actually cares about it and wants to make it good. But you were saying something about um, uh, I lost it, but I had a good thought there. You were when you were talking about uh, so I was gonna say I wonder maybe if a lot of that is sort of lost on like younger audiences, right? Because we try and show them stuff that came back in the day, and you were talking about Indiana Jones and like the visuals, and I think one of the best parts about that is like that's Steven Spielberg. So
Yeah.
like that man is such a great storyteller, and I think any filmmaker out there will tell you that. Like there's probably some people out there who really are like fuck Steven Spielberg, but like he really clearly does know how to make a movie, and more
Yeah.
importantly he knows how to write a movie. And I think that that's a
Yeah.
big deal because even when you're looking at those outdated visuals from back in the day, what keeps you so immersed
The
is the
story.
story. What pulls you so far into it is the writing and how they bring you into the tension of the story. And so when things are happening on screen, even if they look a little fake, I mean, at this point, you're so pulled in that you're okay with like believing that this thing, you're the suspension of belief. And one of the places you were talking about being overstimulated and the way that new like sequels especially are so vastly different. The one that I think is like the biggest one to look at, Jurassic Park. The
Yeah.
original Jurassic Park is such a beautiful movie that takes its time. Like it doesn't introduce all of the crazy visuals or the dinosaurs or anything like right away. There's a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of like
Mhm.
understanding that like this is about science and the places that men shouldn't be testing themselves, and maybe there are some things that we shouldn't be doing and we shouldn't be playing God. And it's a very philosophical movie. Like a lot of the lines that God, I hate that I'm forgetting his name. The Fly.
Oh, Goldblum, Jeff
Goldblum,
Goldblum.
yes, Jeff Goldblum. A lot of the lines that Jeff Goldblum has, because he plays the very philosophical
Mhm.
scientist, and a lot of the conversations that he has when he's sitting there talking to everybody are always questioning what the hell they're doing. He's like, why we shouldn't be doing this? We have too much power. We have too much hubris as humanity. And then you get to all the insane stuff. Him and his broken leg with his shirt open and his sexy chest out
Yes.
as the dinosaurs chasing after him, like all of that stuff. Even though those visuals are outdated, even though those visuals are older, you still feel the tension every single
Yes.
time. The story is done so well. The characters are acting their roles so well that you're pulled into this world. And it doesn't matter that you're watching this big, clunky, robotic dinosaur in the background. You are still in it. You're still looking at that dinosaur like, fuck, dude, I hope it doesn't eat Jeff Goldblum.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And then the stupid little raptors that are with their, they're itty bitty tiny, and then they like show
They
up
spread
in
their necks
droves
out.
and
Yes.
take out Newman. I can't think of what his name is in the movie. Newman
He'll
from
always be
Seinfeld.
Newman.
He'll always be Newman. I don't know what his actual name is either.
Even in Space Jam, he's Newman.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Jurassic Park, and my kids are very big fans of Jurassic Park. My son, huge Jurassic Park fan. So like we've seen the newer ones come out, and again, they're changing. They're supposed to be prequels, and that's what I feel like a lot of these sequels are doing right now is they're calling themselves prequels so that they can connect the stories. And
Yeah.
I don't know how I kind of feel the same about it as the sequels.
It's
um
interesting though, because it's kind of a bummer. So, like, if you didn't know this, the sequels that have been coming out for Jurassic World or for Jurassic Park, all the Jurassic World ones, so it's crazy because they actually are getting closer to what the books Jurassic Park were about.
the, that was
But
gonna I was gonna
but
ask
at
you
the
about
same
books
time,
and
yeah,
movies.
now they're so further away from what like the original movie was and the feel of the original movie that it doesn't even feel like it matters that they're following the book, because in the books, technically the Jurassic Park books are less about the dinosaurs and a theme park, and they're more about the government creating cross matching human and dinosaur DNA to create super soldiers. And so what winds up happening in the movies, or in the books, I mean, is like they literally wind up fighting human dinosaur hybrids. That's like a big, like, horrifying part. It almost like body horror. And so now that's stuff that I think slowly is starting to be introduced into the newer Jurassic Park movies. But it's like, I don't know. I care more about what the feel of the original Jurassic Park was and the way that they were asking these big questions. And there was some cool action in there, but the action itself wasn't just like, oh, big dinosaurs on screen running through the field and there's stuff exploding and it's like very typical action. The action, like, do you remember the scene where the car is slowly falling down over them as they're making
Yeah.
their way down the tree? That is action and suspense done so goddamn well, dude.
Yep.
So well. And there's not a single big explosion or a whole bunch of dinosaurs running around. It's three actors climbing down a tree as
Yep.
a car slowly chases them. But it's like tension. It's so much suspense. Like, you've got your hair standing up on end. They don't do that. They don't do the same thing anymore. But let's
Maybe that's why we were so anxious as well, because we had those really good suspenseful type of movies that like made
probably.
you think. And so living in a world where you're like growing up on movies and you're having these feelings just in daily life, and then you have a movie that you can kind of connect that same feeling to
Yeah.
and see yourself like I think what it is that we knew how those people were feeling in that moment,
Hmm.
because we felt that anxiety or that uncertainty, or that we had to tiptoe and not make sure that we broke a branch. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I wonder if that's kind of the connection that we have with some of those movies where it's like that super suspenseful and things like that. But I did want to ask about I you hit a little bit on the books and movies, and I used to read a lot, but I never really have read some of the movies that have come out, some of the big ones. Um, Jurassic Park 2 was one that I think, what did I used to I'm a nerd. I used to just read the Encyclopedia Britannica. A lot of Stephen King, I read a lot of Stephen King as a kid. I don't care for the movies as much as I do the books. I read a lot of um the like mysteries, not mysteries, what are they called, like the Reacher, the Jack
Like
Reacher,
like
what
the
are those
espionage
kind?
stuff.
like espionage, things like that. Those are the type of books I read. I never really read like I never really got into like series like Harry Potter or what are some of the other the Mockingbird ones? What's that one? Hunger Games.
Hunger Games, or
Yeah,
like
I
Tracy
think that
Percy
was a little
Jackson.
bit I think that was a little bit after me. Percy Jackson, I liked the movie. I liked the show that they have on Disney. But I never read the books. And
Yeah.
I get into a lot of that stuff. Amber Bala just joined in on Instagram on the comments. Right as soon as I'm talking about Harry Potter, it's like she knew because Amber is a huge Harry Potter
Yeah,
fan.
Amber.
She says she's on book 5 of Harry Potter. I did, however, want to start. I know that Audible did like a series on Harry Potter where they have the actors like acting the book out.
Oh, that's pretty
Um,
interesting. Yeah,
yeah,
like
so I
what
kind of
put
want to
into
check
effect.
that out. As I've gotten older, I haven't been able really to read as much as I like to. I just can't focus.
Mhm.
But yeah, I kind of forgot what my question was about the movies
Books and
and the things
movies.
books and movies. But I mean, I think like, oh, I know where I was trying to lead with this. So, movies like Minority Report. Have you seen that movie, Minority Report?
Yeah,
So like
yeah, of course.
Minority Report, I can't think of who the author is in that one, but that one was a book as well, I believe.
Yeah,
Um,
a lot of movies were.
Minority book. What's Gattaca? I don't know if you've seen that movie
Mhm.
with Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman.
Yep.
I think that might have been a book. But my point to this is at those times when I was watching those movies in the 90s, um, it was technology that was so far away. That was just
Yeah,
kind of like, when they've got the cogs in Minority Report and they're getting all of the information to stop crime before it starts, and then they
yeah.
have all these screens and you see them like, you know, um
You get the person floating
do
in the
you
water with all the neural
Y
things.
yeah, and just the computer screens where they're like touch
Yeah,
screens and they're like opening Marvel kind of did that as well with Iron Man was a lot of
yeah.
like the tech stuff. What are you I think like I don't know what the cycle is, but like are people creating things to match the movies? You know what I mean? So like are the real creators of everything, like the AI, the all of these things that we see as scary and crazy, are those things being made by people who grew up watching movies like this and then just kind of figuring out a way to make these things happen? Like especially with the times that we're living in now, I'm trying to figure out like I remember when the cloning and all that came out.
Yeah.
My first thought was Gattaca.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I
then
always think of Michael Bay's The Island. I don't know if you saw that, if you ever saw that one
yeah.
with, yeah, with what's it there, the Scarlett Johansson
Um
and Ewan McGregor.
yeah.
Yeah, with the
My
club
daughter was
together.
just telling me about that movie, just
It's
talking
really
about that movie.
one of the few Michael Bay movies that I'm proud to say that I really like.
Yeah. Well, he
uh,
didn't he do the Ninja Turtles? Was that Michael Bay that did the Ninja
yeah,
Turtles?
yeah,
Alright.
and that one
That
was okay. I didn't hate it. I was a fan of the Ninja Turtles,
yeah.
but then once the Seth Rogen Ninja Turtles movie came out, I was like, all right, Michael Bay, you're
I
done with this.
yeah.
But
It's like we're talking about the sequels and all of the remakes and all that, and it's like,
yeah,
dude, yeah.
but as far as technology goes, I don't know. I always wonder, and I know there are like instances where some people, like some scientists or some inventors, have been like, "Oh yeah, we were inspired by this." But at the same time, I think what it is just that a lot of science fiction is created by really smart people. So like, if you think about like 2001: A Space Odyssey,
Mm,
that movie by Kubrick came from a book that
right.
was written by Arthur C. Clarke, and that book specifically, Arthur C. Clarke. Along with a lot of other classic science fiction novelists, they were a lot of really smart people. Like Isaac Asimov himself was a
Isaac
physicist who
Asimov.
was writing about science fiction. He same with he didn't do a lot of science fiction, but he speculated a lot of things. Carl Sagan, who was a really big part of the science world and the culture back in the day, and
Yep.
he was one of those big pop culture figures who really made it feel like technology that we saw in science fiction was just around the corner. Like he was one of
Yeah.
those people who was an advocate for the things that we could do if we like really cared about science. And so then we see like the movies come to life, right? So we saw 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I mentioned before. That space station that existed in 2001 did not exist at the time, but before they actually started creating the International Space Station, and they used that design because the design was studied, and it uses the gyroscopes to keep everything
Right.
stable while it's in space. And so I think a lot of that stuff is just it's well researched science, and some people maybe just have the imagination to look at what's there, to look at what could be, and then to combine those two things into fiction that maybe could inform the future later on. Because there are even, I think, some of my favorite stories from back in the day, some of my favorite science fiction stories were stories that did predict a lot of this stuff that was going to happen. There's the story, my absolute favorite short story, science fiction, is by Ray Bradbury, who wrote Fahrenheit 4.
9/11. Oh,
No, that's the Michael Moore
duh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's Michael Moore.
but Ray Bradbury was the science fiction author, and he wrote a whole bunch of really great stuff. And Fahrenheit is a really good one about book burning and firefighters not being. Their job is not to save people from fires, but to go and burn the houses or the homes of people who are hoarding books because it's not allowed in the future. And so he also wrote this other story that's called Zero Hour. It's a short story. If you ever get a chance to read it, so cool. But also, if you really want to read it, spoilers. I'm about to give you spoilers. Okay. Zero Hour by Ray Bradbury. So cool. The story itself centers around a mom who is talking to a friend who lives across the country. And firstly, right as the story starts, the story was written forever ago, and it includes the image right off the bat of a mother talking into a video phone to her friend living across the world. So already that was something that like was not available. That was not something that people knew was readily available, but this is what he was imagining to begin with. Then he imagines this scenario where these kids are all playing the same game worldwide. The parents in this house are making jokes about their kid that their daughter's playing, and the family away across the world relates to it, and they're like, well, weird, my kids are playing a similar game. Turns out all the neighborhood kids are playing them all across the world because it's part of a massive alien invasion that's taking place. But all of this technology that's very casually described in the story is stuff that was not available or present whatsoever, but somebody just thought of it, right? Like they thought of like the what could happen in the future, the technology we have now, how could that advance, what could that look like, and they put it into the story. And then I do believe absolutely that in some instances scientists in the modern age are like, this looks really cool, I think we could totally do this. On top of that, it could be something that actually makes life a little bit more convenient for people, so why wouldn't we want to?
Yeah.
But then you have the other side of that, where,
Which is people, the corporate aspect to it. Basically
where
the
they
human
see
the base
yes, where they see dark, terrible things in technology, and they're like, let's do it. Let's make that. Why not? That looks cool as hell. Let's make the Torchifier 3000 and torture people forever and a day. I think it's hilarious. But yeah, we see it all the time, and I think I absolutely think there is a big effect on what people wind up turning into technology and what people back in the day were creating with their minds and throwing out there. I think a lot of that is inspired in the same loop.
Yeah. I think let me get to some of this. Am I still on here?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, okay, okay. I was looking at Instagram and then I saw a pop-up that said my recording stopped. I'm like, did I do something again? But shout out, what's going on? Death in a Hoodie. I can listen to Grizz's sweet voice all day. And
Thank
let's
you.
see.
Thank you, Death in a Hoodie.
We've got Amber also saying, I feel like the world is moving towards the movie Wally. So I haven't seen Wally. So there's a time on these animated movies where I kind of like stopped watching them. So I never seen Wally. Um,
You should. It's really
but
good.
I can. Is it really? I think
Yeah,
I never
it's
wanted
I
to
will.
watch it because it just looked sad and like maybe possibly real.
Yeah,
um,
honestly, it is a little bit, but I think the point of the movie was sort of like, finding a reason for hope within something that feels very hopeless. And the way that they
mm,
do it, I think, is really interesting because humanity itself is basically like on full automation. Humanity is just sort of in auto mode. We've lost our bodies. Everybody is very big. The way that they even show their density, their bone density, and like the growth of their bodies as they like, because there's a lot of detail in that movie. But at one point, they show a chart that sort of shows how the humans have evolved involved because they've just been sitting in these chairs for so long, and it shows like,
Oh.
yeah, like their moans really aren't even like touching each other anymore because there's probably more like cartilage and fat in between them than there used to be, and so the humans really are like not even the big part of the story. At one point one of them gets involved, but for the most part the entire story is told without words through the
Yeah.
perspective of two robots, which should be the least human aspect of the film, but that's where it sort of switches on you. And so even though, yeah, I definitely think that Amber's right, maybe hopefully not, but there is definitely this idea that that's where we're going, right? Like the humanity is just going to be staring at screens all day, getting their automated food, and that's just we're just going to be content with that because we're given comfort. But the movie itself shows, the opposite, that like we got to get uncomfortable in order to make progress, and by the end of the movie, that's what you see. So I definitely, I would recommend. I think you'd really enjoy it. I definitely recommend checking it out.
Yeah, I might. I might be in the good headspace to be able to kind of watch it. Let's see here in the comments. If let's see, Death in a Hoodie. If you really think of the plot for Wally, it's super fucked up. Also, the movie Up.
Up to,
Yeah,
yeah,
Up is one that I
is
have seen.
heartbreaking.
That one's so sad. It's just ugh, especially now that I'm getting older. I mean, I'm not up older, but I am getting older and I have a more of appreciation for life and things like that. So it's kind of I agree with that. Um and there was something else I was gonna say. Oh, so like with Wally, I remember it being winning awards, and that was kind of how I really actually heard about the movie was because of it winning some awards. I'm not sure if it won like what are those things? Oscars, or I
Oh
don't
yeah,
know exactly.
I can't remember
Uh
what it did win either.
but I,
Yeah.
I think it did win some movies, and that was kind of how I came upon it. Also my brother, that's kind of my brother's era of movies. Um let's see, Amber says, as I get older, I relate more to the Disney villains, right? So and and in all movies, I will say, and I hit on this a little on a live that I did maybe about a year ago or so. I tend to relate more so with the villains in the movies, and it's not because they're um causing chaos and destruction, but more so because their origin story usually starts with them having some sort of issue happening to them that kind of flips them that way, right? Like we don't start out being that way. Shit happens to us,
Yeah.
and that's what makes it happen. So like one that I say a lot is like Darth Vader. Kind of going back to his origin story. There most of them, I think most villains have that story where it's like um you know I would relate to them a little bit more than the hero because I was going through stuff where I was hurt.
Yeah.
And so hurt people. And so you can kind of understand why they're doing you don't agree with the things that they're doing, but you can understand like, oh, like when you've been in those deep dark places and you feel alone, you can understand how they're lashing out.
Well, it's interesting because there's been a big conversation around that lately. Like, there's been a lot of people who've been talking more and more about the way that, and it's funny because some people are talking about how they don't like it because in recent time, at first we were starting to see, and I think Marvel was really doing this because
Mhm.
obviously Marvel is like one of the most prominent types of movies where you're going to see a very, very basic good versus bad. You're always going to know who is the good guy and who is the bad guy. Whereas other more complicated films, they're going to really make you parse it out. They're going to make you think about what these characters are doing and how they're doing it, and which one is bad and which one is actually good. But when it comes to Marvel and stuff like that, with superheroes, it's all cut and dry. It's right there in front
Yeah.
of you. And one of the things that Marvel's done, and that I think has shaped the way that villains have started to appear more in Hollywood in general, is that they have started writing they've written Marvel villains to be more complex, and so within that, you're not just getting like a basic, this villain had something happen to them, and because of that, they turned evil, and nobody was ever there to intervene in their life, so they became the most possible evil you can imagine. But then you've got like villains like Thanos, right? Who almost his entire life was evil. Technically, in the comic books, he was made fun of because he was an ugly alien, technically on
Right.
the planet that he lived, and everybody hated him, and so that sort of grew him into this thing. And he just happened to be the most powerful, so nobody could stop him when he finally started doing his thing, right? And in this one, they give you the idea that he is fighting for technically the future of the world. He
Right.
Thanos wants to kill half the universe because he believes that that will leave us with the amount of resources that we need for everybody to grow up in a better world. He's not seeing the idea that people are going to die. He's seeing that people are suffering in this moment, and that if a drastic change isn't made, people are going to continue to suffer. And so in his mind, he is a hero. He is not a villain. He is a person who is doing what needs to be done for the greater good of the universe. But they sort of feed that to you in a way that does make you kind of feel like, well, I don't know, maybe he could be right. And since
Yep.
since this sort of thing has been happening, where you want villains to feel a little bit more sympathetic, that's continued to happen across media after the Marvel franchises exploded. Now you're seeing a lot more villains that are more relatable, that have experienced things that other people have experienced, but because they might not have had the same healthy path, they took the other side, and you see what the extreme of experiencing that terrible thing is, right? But it's
Okay.
still relatable because you it starts at a place that everybody's been to, but that maybe a lot of people were able to get help for, and go down the right path. And this is just the other side of that. And so maybe our obsession with that is that because people are writing this so much better, we can almost sort of we already have seen ourselves in villains, people who've been traumatized, who've experienced these really terrible things, but now we're starting to see ourselves as more sympathetic, right?
Right.
We're not just looking at this character and they are Darth Vader, the pinnacle of evil, the most powerful evil thing in the entire universe, no redeemable qualities whatsoever, until we finally take his mask off and see that he's just a human being. In all of these, now we're seeing the human being, but we're
Right.
also seeing the pain that can push somebody to do something so terrible.
Exactly. Yeah. You see, instead of Darth Vader, you see, was it Anakin? You just
Yeah,
see a little boy who's hurt and sad and alone and scared. So
who
yeah,
was manipulated by two different sides and never knew
ex-
exactly which side to pick and who was right,
ex-
and he was trying to decide who the good guy was and who loved him, and he couldn't see it because he was being blinded. Yeah, it's a
it's
very complicated situation.
It is, and you think about, relating that to mental health, that's how looking at your inner child is, and a lot of the healing your inner child, I feel like is important, and that's why I think that it helped me so much was because you get to go back and look at little Anakin Skywalker and say like, "Oh, okay," but we were talking, let me get to we do have some comments on Instagram. Amber is talking about, "The Little Mermaid's dad will get your ass back in that CKO." She says, "When I'm out at Walmart on a Saturday afternoon, I'm like, maybe Thanos was onto something." Right? And Grizz, you hit on it perfectly, because I think that popped up before you even hit on Thanos, and she says, goes on to say, "Government equals Thanos snap equals COVID." Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're kind of seeing that shit come back again. I mean, there's a little hantavirus thing going on, and yeah, I don't know, man. Just seems like there's a pattern there.
Yeah.
And let's see, we have Death in a Hoodie saying, "I'm the villain always." Lower Valley kids are always a villain. Death in a Hoodie. LVK, ND. Let's see. He also says the villain in Black Panther, Michael B. Jordan's character,
Yeah,
has a good story. Yeah, he really does have a good story.
that is one of the ones too. That's another one of those that like Marvel really wrote that like a lot of people were like, well, I don't know. He's probably right, like colonization stole all these things and
Yep.
he's just trying to like repair what's been broken. And and,
Yeah.
and a lot of people watched that movie and they were like, I don't know. Michael B. Jordan might be right.
Yeah. And I think like you're saying, like, Marvel kind of happened at, and they've gone through their different writers and things like that. And I think they had kind of an evolution where, you know, they on one hand ruined movies for people because they took out the creativity to it, as far as like the dialogue, the scripts that we're talking about, movies like The Godfather, those types of dialogue movies, long ass movies, and they kind of changed the way that movie making happens. But like you're saying, some of the writing has improved a lot, and I think that I don't think justifies anything, but I think that it's good to see that some of that is coming back to characters having stories
Yeah.
and not just selling big blockbuster movies to, like you said, the cash grabs, the money grabs.
Yeah. And
um
I might be one of the few here, but I love Marvel movies. I love the
y-
Marvel
y-
universe. I love all of it. I really even think that I know that there are some, like I know Scorsese is really against them. He feels like they're just theme parks, you know. And for the most part, like there are some out there that I don't think are great, but I think as a whole, the Marvel films have done some really cool original things, and I think that they've really even you can sort of see that there has been a way that they have changed what like blockbusters look like. They have changed
Yes.
sort of you know, because I know that because they're a massive franchise, it does sometimes suck seeing the way that like originality has been sucked out of some films, because these specifically, they go for the IP that exists and that they know is popular and that they know can get butts in seats. But at the same time, I got to give them credit, because there's some of those films that they're writing that are so good. And I will say this, and I don't know how many people know it. This is mental health in movies. So I personally, if you go back and you look at Avengers Endgame, the very last movie, Avengers Endgame is an entire film that is about collective grief. That entire movie is about a series of heroes that we have only ever seen win massive battles. This movie starts 5 years after every single one of those heroes that is still alive is dealing with an incredible loss. Not just they didn't beat this hero and some of their friends died, half of the universe was wiped out because they didn't do their jobs. It's the biggest threat that they've ever faced. And if you look at each hero, I mean, Thor alone is like one of the biggest examples of how hard he was hit by that grief. He was one of the strongest heroes in that universe. He could have, you know, dusted himself off, walked off to the next planet, and kept fighting the next thing. Instead, he became an alcoholic. He
Hmm.
became a recluse. He's sitting at home, you know, trying to forget about everything that happened, not wanting to think about a single instance of it. Hulk, because of the entire loss, is transformed into a whole new character. He finds a way to, you know, overcome his own grief and the abuse that he's faced, and connect the two versions of himself in like perfect syncrasy. We've got Captain America, who decides that if he can't save the entire world and he can't keep fighting, at the very least he's going to try and save the people around him. He started a
Yep.
therapy group for people who've lost others. We've got Black Widow, who has thrown herself into her work. She has completely and totally like given up on having real connections with anybody. She's just trying to do what she needs to do to move on to the next thing and hopefully see good things happen. You've got all of these characters have experienced this massive loss, and every single one of them deals with it not like a superhero, but like a human. And that is not something that I think you'd be able to see if we hadn't had this collective 20-year arc that like or 10-year arc that showed us all of the ways that these heroes could connect. And then even Tony Stark in Iron Man
I was
3.
gonna
This is
say,
I was going to say this is one that I will fight for day and night, because people hated it, but it is another movie that when I saw it in theaters, I thought was so ahead of its time. It is an entire movie about PTSD. It is about
yep.
him wanting to throw aside the suit because every time he puts it on, he gets panic attacks from what happened when he was in New York.
Hmm.
It is a film where he is rebuilding himself, so much so that he destroys his entire collection of suits that he built out of PTSD because he needed something to work on to try and get his mind off of the stress, destroys all of them and starts over because he's able to figure himself out. That is an entire movie about PTSD and what happens when you're trying to deal with that trauma.
Yep.
Like the entire Marvel universe is filled with these really, really incredible stories. Now, some of them are a little hit or miss. I'll give you that much. But
Right.
beforehand, when it started, these stories they had so much depth and so much creativity and so much passion in them. They might not be reflecting that exactly now, but I think we got to give them credit for the real stories that they were able to tell and the way that they were able to pull that out.
100% agree, and that was the movie that I was gonna was Iron Man 3. That one, when I saw it, I was like, "Oh, that's panic attacks." That was before I
Mhm.
realized PTSD and the connection to it.
Yeah.
And being able to see that happen and watch with my husband and be like, "That's what a panic attack feels like." That's
Yep.
how it sounds when I the tunnel vision, when he's in the bar,
Oh
and I
my
think
God. Same
I've
with
talked
you.
about this. When he's in that bar and he's talking to that little boy, or the little girl's asking for an autograph, and he's like, "Ugh," that's like, that was one of the first times I ever saw a panic attack filmed in a way where I was like, that's exactly how it
Yes.
feels."
Or the
And
Edward Norton Hulk movie. Did you the one that came
I did,
before Bruce before Mark Ruffalo?
Mark Ruffalo, yeah, that
That one, they focused a lot on what the trauma was. Like, I remember there's
yeah,
a whole scene where he's looking at the water as he's taking a shower, and all of a sudden he gets a flashback to a minigun that's shooting at him. And the way that they flash between the shower head and the gun in this really perfect way,
yep,
and then all of a sudden he's like, you know, panicking on the floor in the shower. They did so much of that. So like literally the entire movie is him trying to control his PTSD because he doesn't
yep,
want to keep turning into the Hulk, you know?
yep. Yeah. No, I agree. I think that Marvel, another movie that they just recently did, what's it called? The Thunderbolts? Is it called
Oh,
The
yep, yep.
Thunderbolts? Oh my god.
That one was
That
also good.
other movie, I watched it here at home, with my family, and the one of the scenes at the end where, one of the characters is, like, trying to sacrifice himself or whatever, and they all jump on him, and I'm just thinking about it, it's gonna make me cry again. Sydney's laughing
Well,
because
they did such a good job with that
they
one.
did
They did such a good
because
job.
when you're in these mental health, not breaks, but when you're struggling with mental health, whether you're in therapy, whether you're healing from it, or maybe you don't even know and you just watch movies and you feel a connection to it, you see something that represents how you feel. So like in that scene, they every one of those characters rushes to him to protect him and to save him. And when you feel so alone and you finally start to feel a team or a group of people around you when you're just like clinging to life barely, yeah, that one was another one that the Thunderbolt movie was
Yeah.
excellent. I highly recommend you guys, if you haven't seen it, watch it. It's about the misfits, the villain, not villains, but the what are those things called?
The anti-heroes is what they call
Anti-heroes is what they call
but
them.
and it does a great job too because if you've ever dealt with like addiction or anything like that,
It's yeah.
they are totally okay with because the main one of the main characters that they wind up meeting, and I won't spoil anything, but he was a former meth addict, and I was
Yeah.
surprised that for a Disney movie that they were okay with allowing some of that conversation. They talked way more about stuff that I did not expect them to talk about,
Yeah.
things that I didn't expect them to even bring up or joke about. They made jokes about, and it was a
Yes.
darker movie than I expected it to be, but with a very uplifting end. And I
Right.
agree. I think that moment too speaks to probably to like the bigger audience of people who've experienced like suicidal ideation,
Yeah.
especially because I think that that for me was this sort of metaphor of like a person being on the end, right, and wanting to sacrifice themselves or wanting to give themselves up, wanting to like end this thing and trying to do it in a way that feels noble, and still having all of these people around you who are like, no, like that's not worth it. Like you don't need to throw
Yes.
your life away. You don't need to give up. Like we are here and we will carry you, and you can be our family and we will be there for you.
Yeah.
And I know that not everybody has that when they're at the edge, but I know that a lot of people have been saved because of it. And so yeah, like that metaphor is so apt, and they do such a good job of like diving into the darkness of what people experience, and a lot of the acting in that was just so top tier. Thunderbolts was a very different movie than
The
Marvel has been putting out lately.
Yes, I loved it, and at first I was kinda like, "Man, I don't know," and when I saw it, I was bawling, I was feeling it, I was like, "Fuck, Thunderbolts is my new favorite, Marvel movie." But yeah, I think they do a good job of that. Let's see, we have here in the comments, Death in a Hoodie, "Have you noticed there haven't been any good comedies lately? Like Superbad, Pineapple Express, stuff like that. Why I miss
Yeah.
them." You know why? I have a theory, and I think that stuff doesn't really happen so much is because we had this whole thing with cancel culture going on, and the people that make those movies, most of them are around my age, maybe a little bit older, were very offensive, and we don't mean to be. And I think that they kind of steered away from that. But yeah, Super Bad, Pineapple Express, those are good. They just did a new and C's on sorry, I hope I'm saying his name right. He just did the one with Keanu Reeves. Good Fortune, I think it's called.
Yeah, Good Fortune, Aziz Ansari and Keanu. Yeah.
Aziz Ansari, I mean, it wasn't that much of a comment. I mean, it's funny, but yeah, I think I haven't seen really any. Maybe it's because I haven't seen any Eddie Murphy movies, Martin Lawrence movies. Those are like the ones that I used to go to for like comedy.
You know,
Let's see, Amber said it's true. Step Brothers or Dumb and Dumber. Again, I feel like it's just that comedy. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Grizz? You're more into the scene of people being out in the open than I am. So I don't know. My opinion is pretty skewed on
I mean,
that.
honestly, I think it's I'm not entirely sure. Maybe the people who were making comedies have moved because if you've noticed, like a lot of those ones you mentioned, Will Ferrell movies, Seth Rogen, a lot of those guys have gotten older. The people who were in our, I think when we were growing up, Louis, I think you're from Death in a Hoodie is closer to my age. And when we were growing up, we were getting a ton of those comedies, a ton
Yeah.
of them. But a lot of them, if you think about it, they were Seth Rogen run, they were Will Ferrell run, they were, they were the same people who were consistently making these. I think one of like the last like good comedies that I can think of that didn't come directly from that era that I'm like really, really thinking about that I thought was really good or made me laugh a lot, had jokes that, could be offensive, but I think were just generally funny was Tag. I don't know if you remember that
I
one with
did see that movie,
John
and that
Hamm and yeah,
yeah,
there was a lot of people and I think that's one of the last ones that I can really think of that felt like a lot of those other movies where it was a little slapstick. They were making fun of each other. They were doing all these really crazy, ridiculous things. There's
yeah,
references to silly stuff. They're okay with calling each other a bitch or like whatever. Like there's not really
yeah,
like anything being held back. But again, I think that's like a remnant of some of the movies because I think they tried to bring them back. They tried to remake the Family Vacation movies recently.
yeah,
And
those
they
I
tried
didn't like those.
yeah, and so I don't know. I think for me, maybe it just feels like a lot of the comedy people have grown and they're doing different things now. Will Ferrell doesn't really do as much comedy. Seth Rogen has moved further into like more auteur stuff. Like obviously he's
Yeah,
running. He does the studio on Apple
on Apple.
TV, yeah, and so you can see that the projects that he's doing too are way more. They definitely feel like they're above what he was doing, and so I'm not sure. I couldn't tell you why more people aren't making those, but we might see how good they can do because I know the new Scary Movie is coming out. And so, if
Yes.
you were a fan of the franchise, then there's maybe you'll enjoy these. But if they don't do well, then I think that maybe the audiences just generally are not looking for that type of movie anymore. I,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I get. Well, we'll have to see until like maybe people put out more of those big comedies if they can come back. Because we've also got the new Spaceballs coming out soon.
I'm
Like
excited to see that one.
yeah, so like there are a couple of comedies that are coming back out, but I agree with you, Death in a Hoodie. I don't think that there are enough, and I'm not. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't pinpoint exactly what happened that all of a sudden these movies stopped being made.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, I'm trying to think back to like the cop movies that I used to watch, and I think like Kevin Hart, Ice Cube did one. Tag
Yeah,
you
that was a
mentioned is
Kevin Smith movie too. You know what's
yeah,
crazy? I forget about that. Cop Out, right? Is that the one you're talking
cop.
about?
Yeah, is
Cop
that
Out.
what it was
Cop
called?
Out was
Cop
a
Out?
Kevin Smith movie. That was directed by Kevin Smith.
Yeah, I mean, Chasing I love Kevin Smith, Chasing
Yeah.
Amy, Clerks, all those types of movies. Yeah, I think the filmmakers like that, we've just kind of not we've I'm not a filmmaker by any means, but I know like with my comedy and my sense of humor, I have to not sense like not restrict myself from saying some of the things because again, that's just the way that I speak and I think that um, let's see, hold on. Death and Eddie saying, I think offensive comedy is coming back with Kill Tony, South Park. Oh, dude, South
I
Park.
don't know though, because even South Park started back up again, and then I mean they're still on this very like slow like path. Like it doesn't feel like they have as much strength behind them as they used to. And I
As
think
they
maybe yeah, and again that might also be again just because people are the people who are making that stuff are getting older because even the people who make those movies, that's an older
trait,
comedy as
but
well.
basketballs couldn't have been made right now. I'm thinking like some of the bench warmers probably couldn't be made right now. You know what I mean? Like a lot of
You know which one's not nearly as offensive, but I bet you it wouldn't be able to be made now either. Zach and Miri Make a Porno is one of my
that.
favorite comedies.
That's a great
It's
movie.
it's an incredible movie. The writing is so good. It deals with a lot of like mental health stuff, but at the same time,
Yeah.
it deals with like real life relationship stuff. And then it's also the ridiculousness that this is a group of regular people working at a coffee shop trying to make a porno to save their
Just
home so that they don't lose their home to rent. So
yeah.
all of it's so relatable, and I think it's another Kevin Smith movie as well. But that was one of the. I mean, that's one of my all time favorite comedies. And you know what? Maybe they couldn't make it now, or maybe if they did make it now, it wouldn't be the same feeling. Grandma's Boy, one of the ones that I love a lot. Grandma's Boy, if you've never seen that one about all the stoners.
Grandma's Boy, That's My Boy. That one is a that one used to be not one of my I was like, this is not a funny movie. And the more I watch it, the more I'm like, oh my God, this movie is
That's
freaking
my boy.
hilarious. That's My Boy. That's a terrible movie, but it's
Adam
hilarious.
Sandler one, yeah,
It's a
it is
Sandler
terrible.
movie. So like just all those movies. But like you said, you're talking about Kill Tony. I think some of the stuff is coming back, but I think a lot of it is just kind of like aged out. You know what I mean? Like you said, like
It feels like a lot of our comedies have drifted from like adult comedies to just like kid stuff, you know? Like
Yes, and
think that's
I
where we go now for comedy is like the kids movies.
yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, like, look at Eddie Murphy going and doing his run of kid movies.
Yeah.
Of the Doctor Dolittle is one of my favorite movies. But
You know what
yeah,
though? I wish they would bring back kids movies that were semi-adult, you know, because like
yes,
Shrek was such a great like movie like that, where obviously it was a kids movie, but it definitely like it had a lot of jokes that were later in there that were supposed to be adult jokes. They were
yeah,
meant for an older audience, you know.
yeah,
And I think maybe even in that, if we look at, oh my God, we could probably study that, right? Shrek was a kids movie that was definitely made for an adult audience. It had
mhm,
jokes in there that are gonna go above most kids' heads, and then as the series progresses, it loses some of that. That edge goes away, and the series, all the way even into Puss in Boots, it starts to feel
yep.
more like children's movies. And now, have you seen the designs that they have for the Shrek remake that they're doing?
I
They,
haven't. My daughter was telling me I didn't even know there was another one coming out.
yeah, and it definitely like they have it's like that Disneyfication where like everything is getting that like more adorable style instead of
Yes,
it looking
the
like more
filter,
unique.
the
Yeah,
golden filters or whatever it is.
and that's what it looks like. The Shrek characters, they look softer, their eyes are wider,
Yeah.
they look, a little bit more cutesy. They don't look like what they looked like before. And I noticed it right away, and a lot of people didn't initially, but when they first put the pictures out, I was like, they look weird. And I had some friends who were looking at them, and they were like, I don't know, they look the same, but you could
Yeah.
tell, you could see it. It was different, So maybe
Yeah.
that's what happened. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe all of the raunchy comedies, they got condensed into kids movies with slightly adult humor, and
Yeah.
now they've just turned into kids movies.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think definitely we need more comedies. I think we just need better selection of movies. But yeah, I agree. But Grizz, we're going here on over an hour, and I know you have a early call time.
Yes.
So I just wanted to again thank you Amber, Death in a Hoodie, everybody that joined in on Instagram,
Yeah. Thank you all.
hanging out with us because one of my hopes for doing some of these lives is to be able to kind of get you guys to engage a little bit and see I'm not just this serious chick all the time. I do and just show a little bit more of who I am. I have a hard time sometimes putting that out there because I am just so awkward. But Grizz, thank you for honoring me tonight by coming on this live and having this conversation that I was excited to have about movies, and we touched a little bit about mental health and some movies. I didn't want it to be too heavy, but I appreciate you. Yeah, I still want to do a thing where we were reviewing movies like Siskel and Ebert. I think that would be just the best thing ever.
And we
So I
can
don't
we
know.
can review them specifically through the lens of mental health. Like, how does this
Yeah,
movie tackle this issue?
yeah, and so y'all reach out to us in the DMs and the comments and let us know what movies you like us to watch, and maybe we can make that happen because I think that would be really a cool idea to do. But again, Grizz, thank you. Do you have anything coming up that you wanted to share?
You know what? Yeah, I this weekend actually, the 16th. If you're going to be around, I'm sure a lot of you know them. The Buzz podcast. They are hosting their next pillow fight, their pillow fight
Mhm.
fundraiser, and it's all going to Mijo Things Foundation that does a lot of really great stuff for kids and sports. And I know, as a matter of fact, Death in a Hoodie's Louis is going to be in the ring this weekend as well. So if
Yeah.
you want to come and watch him, duke it out, he's going to be fighting Johnny from A Town Talk. So that's going to be fun. And I'm going to be one of the judges. So I'll just be hanging out on the side watching. Nation of Wrestling is going to be there. I
Yes.
think they're putting up the whole big ring the same way they did last year. So
Yep.
definitely come on out and support. It's going to be at the Yard, the patio beer, the beer garden. So go check it out. We're all going to be there Saturday. It's going to be a good time. And of course, it's a fundraiser. So all the money goes back to the Mijo Things Foundation, which they're doing great stuff out here in the city. So I think that's the biggest thing I got. And my other thing is, you see my shirt, the Plaza Classic Film Fest. Um, I am going to be part of the selection committee, which I'm very excited about. I've been working super hard
Awesome.
to try and connect with the foundation so that I can work with the Plaza Classic Film Fest. So not only will I get to be a big part of some of the internal stuff, I'm also gonna get to hopefully host a couple of the movie essay nights where I'll get to talk about a film before you go in to watch it in the theater, and I'm very 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 excited about all of that. So keep an eye
Hell
out for
yeah.
Film Fest. Go out to the Mijo Palooza Pillow Fight fundraiser on the 16th this weekend. And that's it. Otherwise, listen to Iris and Grizz Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m. on 93.1 Kiss FM.
Yes, and make sure that you're engaging there on the post for the not the jerk post. Some of them are out
Yes,
of hand, y'all.
I
You'll see
love it. Dude.
you'll see
So many
talking
people
about it in
send
the
us their
comment.
situations. Oh my
You'll
God.
see talking about it in the comments sometimes like seriously people, come on. Come on now.
I'm glad you're jumping in, and it's always local stuff. It's always local stories. And if
Yes.
you have a situation, send it to us. Jump in our DMs. Send us your situation. We will use it. We'll keep you anonymous, or if you want all the smoke, we'll say your name completely and totally. You let us know.
Hey, let's go. No, but thank you, Grizz. I did want to mention again, Nation of Wrestling,
Mhm.
Buzz podcast, Miho Palooza, the Pillow Fights. They have some amazing matches going on. I have been doing my work. I have been exposure therapying the fuck out of myself. So you will see me out there on Saturday. I don't know how long I'll be able to stand the heat
Yes,
because it is outdoors. But I am gonna make it out there, so I'm excited to see you in person again, Grizz.
yes,
Because I haven't been able to see you since I think we did the mental health thing with the pie with Jez
yes.
for
Yeah,
the
with when you did
at
the
me
live podcast, that was cool.
when that was my very first live podcast, and that was you were a big part of it there, kind of pepping me up before, and I'm forever grateful just for you in general. We've gone back and forth with some stuff, like I'll ask advice, and thank you for always answering to me. That means a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so make sure you guys are hitting up the buzzed Miho Palooza. One thing I did want to plug is not plug, but let y'all know is your girl's hosting her first event. So I am introducing a portion of talking about it, which is now called Be About It. And talking can
Mm,
only get us so far. We have to eventually get into action and take action to start getting these things going. And so the first thing that I'm doing is healing through art. We're going to have a series where you're healing through different modalities to show that you can heal in different ways, not just going and sitting in the therapist room or whatever it is. So our first one is healing through art. It is May 30th. It is going to be a sip and paint. We will not have alcohol.
nice,
We will have caffeine provided by Pedaling Coffee. So we'll have coffee, matcha. We'll have some snacks. We'll have Little Stacks is going to be having their
nice,
little stacks there, so we'll have some food, some drink, and you'll be hearing from Dr. Ortiz. We'll be doing a healing your inner child type of painting.
nice.
It's going to be in collaboration with Mind Forward Health Center, Dr. Ortiz, and the Tattoo Honey, Yvette, from Honey and Myrrh. So
Yes,
basically what we're doing is we're coming together to show you that you can heal in all different ways. It doesn't have to look one way. So y'all, we still have seats available. Space is limited because this is our first one. Your girl went out and had to get a job so that we can start hosting some of these events. So, please make sure that you sign up. I really want to let you guys know that let's be about some action. You guys say you want to feel better, and now we're able to give you a space to do that. So please take advantage. It's a Paint and Sip Healing Through Art. You can find it on my Instagram page. And the other thing that I want to ask people to do is do not drink and drive. I recently had a live with the Sober Streets movement, the families who have lost people here locally. Um, through people drinking and driving. They're trying to really work on reforming laws and making it to where people are being held accountable. And it starts with our leadership in city council. It starts with our election process. So make sure that you are taking action. You're getting involved in knowing who these candidates are, these judges coming up. We have runoffs coming up. They are going to be directly in charge of DWI cases, assault cases. So make sure that you check out those candidates, epcountyvotes.com.
Yeah.
And tomorrow, Tuesday, if people are still on the live, Tuesday, May 12th, City Council in their meeting has an item on the agenda to discuss changes to DWIs and DUI enforcement. So if you have a chance to make a comment, you can sign up in the morning. You can go to elpasotexas.gov and go into city clerk, and you'll be able to find it. I also have a video up on my Instagram that shows you how to exactly get in to make public comment. So please, people, let's get involved. Let's start taking some fucking action and just start healing and being better together.
Hmm.
Again, Grizz, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I appreciate you, and I just look forward to seeing you on Saturday so we get to hang out a little bit.
Yes, and thank you for having me. It's a lot of fun. Love getting to talk movies and mental health. And like the lady said, sober up, all right? From one
Mhm.
sober person to another, cut it out.
Right? Or drink at home or plan
Yeah,
ahead. There's
drink safe.
Ubers,
You don't
there's
got to cut it out,
Lyfts.
but you know, yeah.
Yeah, you know,
Be safe.
well, like I again, I'm sober as well, and it's funny how when you get sober, you kind of look back, and you're like, man, why was I doing that shit? Like, I don't wake up hungover. I remember everything now. Well, I remember most things. I'm getting older, so I don't remember a lot. But you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's not hard, y'all. Plan ahead. Get a designated driver. I don't
Even
know.
got
We're
free
talking.
Ubers now you can get on the beginning of the weekend, you know? So,
There you go. And I'm thinking back to a lot of those 80s movies, Teen Wolf. They had a house party and they had a keymaster. Everybody would put their keys in a sock and
yep.
that shit gets put away. Bring back the keymaster, y'all. So remember, guys, keep on talking about the hard things so you can start enjoying the good things, but also with that talking, you need to take action. So don't just talk about it, be about it. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Grizz. Let me see here. I gotta figure out how to end. Okay. I think I ended on Instagram. Let me figure out how to end on here. Let's see. It says your recording has stopped. Okay. Let's see. Completely kicked me out. And
Yeah.
we're still live. So, all right. Bye again.